Welcome, everyone, to episode number 21. My name is David Reed, and this hour we have the pleasure of welcoming back for the first time. Well, I guess Darren Sumner would have counted for the first duplicate guest, but in terms of Stargate talent, my first returning guest is Mr. Joseph Mallozzi, writer and executive producer of Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and Stargate Universe. He is responsible for so many of the episodes that you love, and we're going to be going through in this episode his writing process for a typical Stargate episode and an overview of SG-1 Season 4. One of the purposes of this show is to provide an oral history for the future of fans who love the franchise and all of its aspects. And we are using YouTube as the platform to meticulously go through every single piece of every single episode with all the people who brought all of these parts together. So that's what we're going to be doing with this particular hour of, hour and a half, hour plus 45 minutes. We ran a little over. I just wrapped up with him and am now recording this for you all. But before we go back in time and bring in Joe, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. This is key if you plan on watching live, and clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and gateworld.net YouTube channels. That's all I've got lined up for you here. And let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Joseph Mallozzi. I am privileged to welcome back Mr. Joseph Mallozzi, who first joined us our first full week on October the 10th, I believe, and he's back again for round 2. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back.
I have to say, I'm distracted by your revolving Atlantis. I didn't realize it moved.
I just got this in the mail last week.
Okay. That's why I never noticed it before.
Right. It's a 3D print from a Hungarian fan by the name of Kevin Sabo. And Amazing. He sent this to me. There are some talented fans out there, man. It's just absolutely ridiculous. My frustration with Atlantis is that Rainmaker generated the original model for Rising. And then other vendors got their hands on it and modified the design over the course of the show. And by the time they got to, you guys got to SGU, it was like, this ain't going to happen again. Destiny is Destiny. Everyone copied the same model. Was that something that they would come to you for and say, hey, we'd like to make modifications for it? Or would they just do it on their own?
No, I mean, honestly, I mean, everything went by Brad and Robert.
Oh, okay.
So, as the creators of the show, they always had final say on the look of the show. And our visual effects supervisor at the time was Mark Savella. And he was very particular about ensuring that the show was perfection visually anyways, and from a visual effects standpoint. So I'm sure he ran everything by Brad and Robert.
Got it. All right. You joined this series. Before I get into that, you and I did not talk at all about Utopia Falls in the last interview that I did with you. Tell us a little bit about that show.
Whenever people ask me about Utopia Falls, it's not that I'm reluctant to get into it, but it was not my show. I was a showrunner. No, okay. I mean, Dark Matter was my show.
Okay.
Utopia Falls was created by a very talented director named R.T. Thorne, who he directs television, but he really got his start in music videos. And he pitched, calls it a genre-bending sci-fi series. It's a hip-hop sci-fi YA series. And it's really interesting. I've never seen anything quite like it. When he pitched it to me before he went off to pitch it to Hulu, I thought, wow, this is really smart and good luck, and ended up selling it to Hulu I needed a showrunner. And he's like, hey, I need a showrunner. And I was like, I can't think of anybody who would be good for this. I thought he was asking me for a recommendation. He was like,
Oh, I see.
no, you. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not hip hop. And he's like, no, I'm hip hop. You're sci-fi. And so I ended up bringing on my dark matter crew, and we got in the room, RT and I, and we essentially broad stroked the first season of the show. And then we got into the writer's room and we broke 10 episodes over the course of something like ridiculous, like, I don't know, like 5 weeks. And then we just went off and wrote, and it was a fun experience. I mean, any production is tough. Any production will have its challenges, but it was just nice to, I guess, get the band back together. Meaning my old crew, and working with RT was a lot of fun. So if you like hip hop, if you like YA sci-fi, maybe it's the show for you.
Is there in the stream of like young adult, like the 100,
Yeah, I guess it's not quite as dark as the 100.
Okay, got it. And would there be any surprises, like cast members from or supporting cast from Dark Matter that make an appearance?
Yeah, actually, Jeff Teravainen, who played Lieutenant Anders on Dark Matter, plays a very prominent role. Kate Drummond, who guested on Dark Matter as a sort of a member of one of the corporations who turns out to be an alien. But I was just thinking about this the other day, that she actually auditioned for another role. She got food poisoning, was in the hospital. I ended up reaching out to her and saying, hey, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I'm so sorry for, letting you guys down. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. I said, we'll circle back. We'll find something for you. And then I ended up finding something for her, and she was terrific. And so, so often happens. You work with people, you enjoy working with them. And so when you are casting for a new production, you think of the people you worked with before. So that's how I ended up with Tori and Mike Dopit and David Hewlett on Dark Matter. And, if we would have done a 4th season, Bob Picardo would have guest starred. And it's the same thing. I mean, we had Kate, we had Jeff, and I'm sure I'll have like plenty of Utopia Falls actors on my next show.
Well, part of it I would think is, I would think that when you have someone that can deliver and do the work, why not bring them in?
Yeah.
And if there's someone that you enjoy watching, why the heck not?
Yeah, and there are times when an actor or actress would be perfect for something. In the case of Commander Truffaut on Dark Matter, I rewrote the role with Tori in mind, much the same way that Phaedra, who's the big bad on Utopia Falls, I wrote with Kate Drummond in mind, because I knew they would be perfect for the role, and they were.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always exciting when the what you had on the page, it's got to be just comes right to life exactly, or almost as close as possible as planned. It's one of the things that I want to talk about with you now, going methodically through your Stargate journey. We're going to start in this episode with season 4, may dip into season 5 a little bit, depending on how quickly we move through the material. You joined with your writing partner, Paul Mully, in season 4. And so the seasons always started up pre-production. An early break of the next season shows would begin before the end of the previous season. Is that right? Like a general idea? What would that process be early on for season 4?
Well, season 4 was kind of an outlier for us because we came in late, really. I mean, a better example would be every other season where we would end and we would already be thinking of stories for next season. And so usually we would take like a couple of weeks off and sort through post-production. And then the writers would gather and pitch out stories. And we would spin for maybe a month and a half, 2 months, and try to get at least a good, at least half the episodes for the season in some sort of rough shape. By rough shape, I mean an outline. And then each of us would go off with a script, maybe two, and we'd head off for the holidays, and then come back in usually February, hopefully with a script or two. And of course, I mean, we were doing, I think, 20 episodes
Initially.
In the latter half. Yeah. Well, 22 initially,
22
and then 20, yeah, and then 20. So you would think that coming in with 10 scripts would be great, but really production is a machine and begins to eat your way through all that material very quickly. So of course, while you're in production, while certain writers are overseeing prep of their episodes or checking out set or in post-production, the other writers are again in the room spinning story ideas to finish out the season.
So for a typical season of Stargate SG-1, when would filming start?
It varied, I think, around March, though, mid-March. Okay. Was when we would start. Actually, the turnaround for those episodes is actually, in my mind, for a sci-fi show, it was pretty tight. I mean, I think we were premiering in like early July or late June on Sci-Fi Network, and and usually we would produce 12 episodes and then go on hiatus, and usually we would take, what was it, like maybe a month of hiatus. Or 2 weeks to a month. A month seems a little long. In any case, and then we would come back, and of course the crew would ask, "Hey, what did you do on vacation?" And of course, the writers, what we did was we just wrote scripts, and then we would power through to, I think, September, maybe early October, at the latest, and then by like November we were spinning for next season.
How many weeks off would you typically get a year to not think of the show? I mean, obviously, that's one of the advantages of actually going on vacation is, hey, I'm sure an idea comes up, not thinking about it.
No, there was, honestly, as a writer, especially working on Stargate, especially those few years when we were producing 40 episodes of television, SG-1 and Atlantis, there was no rest. You were always thinking about scripts. You were always writing the scripts. Even if you were on set, or in the editing room, or in prep, or driving, or if your significant other was talking to you over dinner, you were thinking about scripts. You were running dialogue in your head. It was a machine. You had to deliver, and if you didn't deliver, then you were not much used to the production.
No, then that's fair. Would you find yourself dreaming about the show?
Strangely, no. Dreams were my only holiday from Stargate, really.
Wow. Well,
it's funny because I remember someone asked me, I think we were going out for dinner one weekend, and someone was like, "Oh, is Paul coming? Your writing partner, Paul?" And I was like, actually, no, because we spend so much time with each other. I mean, what was it, like 7:30 to 10, 11 hour days, if we went to set longer, that I won't say we were sick of each other, but we had clearly seen enough of each other during the weekdays.
Yeah. Jeez, man. So let's take a step through, actually 10 steps, through a writing, through the outline of a show to the production of a show to everything from the writing perspective. You sent me 10 steps, thank you, by the way, that I wanted to go through with you as a model of a typical episode of Stargate. Great. And the first step that you sent me was writer's room, which we already kind of brought up. So that would begin in earnest around February?
No, that would begin
March,
right on the heels of wrap of the previous season. So October, November.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean that is a writer's room is, of course, the writers getting together, throwing out ideas, seeing what sticks, and we call it spinning. It's not really spinning our wheels, hopefully, but just spinning ideas. Someone, the idea, we'll come up with an idea, and someone will add to it, and then we'll pitch back and forth, and then we'll break the story.
Okay. And breaking the story is that the same as pitching?
No, pitching is offering up ideas to the room,
Okay.
and either getting brutally shot down, or more often than not supported, and your idea begins to take form, and then that form takes the shape of what will eventually be an outline. But before it's an outline, it's beats on a board, and by beats on a board, I mean we use a whiteboard. And one of us would be a designated writer who would be up there with the marker and mark everything down. Usually it was Paul, because his writing was legible. Mine was not. Brad is left-handed, so he would write and then erase everything he would write with his hand. So it was usually Paul. And so what we would do is we would, as I said, throw around ideas, and then we would build the structure. And it would be a tease and 5 acts. And, the tease would be whatever that opening scene that grabs you. And then you go into the first act, and each act is comprised of 4 to 5 beats, and each act ends with, of course, one of these WTF moments that you kind of propels you into the next act, and is so fraught with the suspense or excitement that the audience will not turn the channel between commercials.
All right. So I just want to, so we have the writer's room is what starts us
Yes.
off. Then we pitch the idea, and that either gets lifted up or shot down.
Yeah.
Then spinning occurs.
Yeah, then the spinning, that's when you throw ideas back and forth. It's like, well, this character, we can't use that character because they died in, season 2, episode 14 or what have you. And then someone will have a great idea and be like, what if the story goes this way? And so really it's a free for all.
Got it. Okay.
A creative free for all.
Then we have breaking the story.
Yes.
So that's when you put it into its 5-act structure, was it?
Yes, exactly. And the 5-act structure, and then within those 5 acts, they're the beats. What happens in each scene? The important narrative beats in each scene.
How long would that take for a typical episode? Just breaking it.
It really depends. I mean, different writers' rooms approach it in different ways. I know that some writers' rooms in LA, I think they take what they call a blue sky approach, where they're so detailed, they'll take something like 2 weeks on a single episode, and they'll have dialogue up there. And we were a little more freewheeling on Stargate, and it's something I always preferred, and as I did with Dark Matter, I did with Utopia Falls. We honestly, a couple of days, usually 2 to 3 days would be a lengthy time to break a single episode.
And by the time Atlantis came along, were you alternating between SG-1 and Atlantis, or were you trying to keep flow and do a block of SG-1 and then a block of Atlantis?
No, when we tried to get as many episodes of both shows as possible, and then whoever was available, if SG-1 was running short on the scripts, then we would get together and we would spin some ideas and look ahead.
So the writer's room for SG-1 and Atlantis occurred in the same room with the same group of people?
Yes, with the same group of people, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Then we have an outline.
Yes.
Now, is this after a writer has been designated for the episode?
Yeah, usually the person who comes up with the idea is the writer who gets to write the script, but not always the case. Some writers are very good idea people. Other writers are very good in the room, and other writers are just very good writers. And hopefully, everyone's a good writer, but some writers are just not great in the room, and some people are just not great idea people. They're better at taking someone's idea and kind of refashioning it or building upon it. And so, but we would take the beat sheet, and each writer would get a script to go home with, and they would go off with the beat sheet and flesh it out into a full outline. The outline's usually I don't know, 8 to 12 pages. And you would just
Wow.
take the beat sheets that you have, sort of those beats, and really just elaborate upon them.
Okay. When I'm looking down through the episodes here, a lot of times there was a story by and then teleplay by credit rather than a written by. Is that when you would have an idea, but another writer would ultimately write it? Is that
Yeah,
when that circumstance would take place?
those are kind of rare situations where a writer will come in with an idea that's almost fully fleshed out, but is unable to write it themselves. At that point, they hand off the teleplay, and so they get the story credit, and the writer gets the teleplay credit.
And for technical speak, on the back end, are those different? I'm curious. I mean, you may not even want to elaborate about it, but I mean, in terms of someone who is fascinated by the process, are those different percentages in terms of royalties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Interesting.
Yes.
All right. Then we have the revised outline. So from outline to revised outline, how long are we? Would that also depend as well?
I think an outline usually takes you, I think, maximum a week. Okay. And you deliver the outline to the other writers, and they will read it, over the weekend or a day or two, and then everybody gathers together and they will give you notes. And then you go off to incorporate the notes, and usually that takes you maybe a couple of days, and you come back with your revised outline. And occasionally you'll get another set of notes, and you'll go off and revise and deliver another draft of the outline. But usually by the end, once we had notes on the outline, we were usually pretty good to go to script, because at that point we kind of trusted one another and enough to know that we would incorporate our the notes.
And by the latter half of each of the seasons, when we're getting into 17, 18, 19, are all of these processes occurring at once? I mean, are you writing outlines for the later episodes while developing, writing specific scripts for?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh
I mean, I look back at some of my my blog posts from way back then, and I would, see, I'd be talking about, okay, I'm prepping. It was like crazy. I pitched an idea for episode 17. I just delivered a draft for episode 15. We're in, I'm in the process of locking, editing, picture locking episode 14. I just saw the rushes for the dailies for episode 12. They look great. I'm in prep on episode. Anyways, it was just interesting how we would juggle so much, and the fact that all the writers in that room were de facto showrunners. So that's what made it work. And Brad and Robert were always very good about training us, allowing us to learn on the job, so that we could step up and take some of the weight off them, some of the pressure off them. And so, I mean, like I said, it's hard to believe that we were producing 40 episodes of television a year at one point.
And your blog, available at josephmallozzi.com.
The blog, yeah.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I would have been like, I'm not getting to the blog. Can you see this? Are you crazy? There's no way, man.
To be honest with you, I find it harder to write a blog when I have more time than when I don't. It's strange.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Wow. I guess because you're just in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And you probably have more that you want to say because you're in the thick of it.
There's more going on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And then we go from revised outline to first draft. Now, you indicated that the outline was around 12 pages of just everything broken down. It's not the script, right?
Correct.
Now the first
no dialogue. Usually no dialogue.
Okay, unless there's like something severe that you really want to hit home with.
Yeah.
And we have the first draft, which is the beginnings of the script.
Correct.
Okay.
So the first draft is really the script. It's the shot directions, the dialogue. It's what is delivered to the actors and the directors and obviously the cast and crew, and everybody works off of. But it goes through various drafts. I want to say an average of 3. I want to say at least 3. So there's a first draft, and you get notes from the writers, and it's a second draft, and then you get another set of notes, usually from the network, ready from the studio. MGM actually was really good about letting us do our thing. I think I remember. You hear that motorcycle?
Nope.
In the background? Okay. In the early stages, I remember in season 4 we would get notes from the network, but after a while they were just like, okay, you guys know what you're doing, and let us do our thing. We would occasionally get, I wouldn't say occasionally, we would always get notes from the network.
Showtime and Sci-Fi Channel.
No, actually, but at this point it was Sci-Fi.
Sci-Fi. So Showtime didn't give notes.
To the best of my recollection, no, I don't remember getting those from
I always wondered about that relationship, because you went from one to the other. So all right, so you got your first draft, and I think it's pretty natural what happens next. You get your second draft.
Can I just back up again? I want to say that I don't recall getting notes from Showtime, but at that point in my career, Brad, we were fairly junior, so it could very well be that Brad was doing the rewrites and then dealing with Showtime. So
got it.
That's a question for Brad.
Okay, that's fair. And then we had the second draft. So what were big differences between typically the first and the second drafts? I'm curious.
Honestly, it would really depend on the episode. Usually the big differences were between differences were front loaded. So the idea you pitched would often be drastically different from the outline, and the outline would be a lot of times fairly different from the script from a structural standpoint, usually, and then and so on. It really, like I said, it depends on the episode. I know that personally, for me, my shortcomings as a writer when I was working on Stargate, the note I would always get was I would give the audience too much credit, meaning I tended not to. I didn't like exposition, so I tended not to explain things and relied on the audience to put things together. And it's a note I would always get, that my writing partner would always give me, that I was giving them too much credit and that I had to make things a little more obvious. So it was kind of a learning experience for me. Things like that, making it more obvious in a way that obviously wasn't clunky, was a challenge. And usually, like by second draft, they'd usually be in pretty good shape. But of course, anything could happen. I remember, what was the episode? Was it Last Stand? It was a Summit Last Stand where
more information.
Martouf was supposed to get guest star.
Yeah, JR.
JR Bourne was supposed to guest star, and then he got there was a conflict, and so he couldn't do it. So we just had to go with was it Lantesh, who's the
symbiote,
with the symbiote, and I was like, well, we do this like very romantic scene with the man with Carter and the symbiote and kissing the symbiote goodbye, and but that was like one of those instances. But sometimes you lose it, when you're in prep, you may lose a location, and suddenly it's like, oh, it can't be in a coffee shop. You have to. We're shooting near a park, so maybe let's have this scene in a park. So, so changes like that would often impact the rewrites.
Would often watch the show, and when you would have hangars or any kind of like old abandoned warehouses, I'd be paying attention. You'd recognize the red trim across a lot of those sections there. It's like they didn't have to go too far for that one. And I often wondered in those situations where under which circumstances those were built right into the script, and other circumstances it's like, well, that location fell through. Bridge Studios is just going to have to pinch hit one of its sound stages just to pull this off.
I think it was very rarely that we had to scramble like that. One of the things that we were always very good at, that Brad and Rob taught us, was to produce on the page. And by produce on the page, you know what you write an efficient script, meaning you know what your budget is, so you know you need how many days at this location and how many days at this location, and you just write to these locations, or you write to your standing sets. But it was very rare that we would have to pinch it. I remember actually, I think once, I think it was just like a malp transmission, a message, and we just shot it. We just used like a brick wall on the bridge lot. And this one comes up because I remember actually Paul and Michael Greenberg, our longtime exec producer on Stargate SG-1, got into it because I think one of them wanted to use a brick wall and one of them didn't, and they kept on going back and forth in that prep meeting. Yeah.
You sometimes just gotta work with what you work with. A lot of those malp shots too are like they're down and they're pointed up, so you've just got gray sky. And it's like, if you got to run outside and shoot one of these things for B-roll or whatever it would be, it's like, got to do it, got to make it happen.
Yep.
Let's move on. I have polish. Now, once you've got your second drafts, your third drafts, however many drafts you've got, the polish, is that more of typically finessing dialogue? Is it like stage direction at that point, or are those already foundation that's already in place?
Yeah, I would love to say that the polish is the final stage of the process, and I guess technically it is, but really the polish usually comes before you get into prep. So you go through your two drafts. Your polish is just to, as you said, get the dialogue perfect, make any adjustments. Then it goes into prep, and at that point, you're like, this actor is unable to it's not going to be available to us. We can't do the coffee shop, and at that point, you start making changes, and those were never really that challenging. The challenging ones were, two. One is the script's too long. It won't board, meaning we had a set number of days to shoot an episode and a set number of pages per day. And sometimes the scripts were too long. They would just be, they would be boarding too long, or they'd be timing long. And we would have to find ways to trim the script. So that was a challenge. Bigger challenge was when the scripts were coming in short, and you would have to either come up with that extra scene, and sometimes it would be brilliant, like exactly window of opportunity, when Brad was like, I got it, and he would go off. And
Brad's idea.
That amazing, a montage sequence. I mean, we all sort of like threw out ideas, but I mean, he was really the guy who was like, okay, and I mean, he already knew that Jack was going to be golfing through that Stargate.
Absolutely. Were those pants Rick's pants?
I believe they were Rick's pants.
That's fantastic.
But
oh God,
I could be wrong.
Okay. And then we have number 10, production drafts. Now, what does that mean?
Yeah. Sorry. Production drafts are really, once you have finished going through the process with the writers, with the networks, and everybody's equally unhappy, then your job is done. And you go into prep, and at that point, the script is locked, meaning, scene 1 is scene 1 and scene 2 is scene 2. And if you ever have, in the event that you end up deleting scene 2 and putting in another scene before scene 3, that scene becomes, I think, like scene 2A. There's no more scene 2, it becomes scene 2A. So essentially the script is locked. And at that point, you go into your prep week. So you start off with a concept meeting where all your department heads gather around a table, and your first AD will read the script or go through the script, and people will flag any concerns they may have. You'll clarify, we need a big floppy hat for this scene. We need, a Zat gun for this scene. And then everyone goes off and starts work. And prep week really is comprised of, it starts with a concept meeting, and then you work your way through the week. You visit with the art department and see what they're up to. They'll give you, they'll bring concept art and the props. Yeah, exactly. the props department will do a show and tell, and you go down to wardrobe, and they'll show you sort of their sketches of what they've got in the works. And you go through that week, and so much gets done in that week. And then the week ends with the production meeting, which is pretty much like the concept meeting. Your first AD reads a script, but by this point, it's just to ensure that everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows all the questions have been answered. You want to make sure, and then you go to camera. So Stargate.
Go ahead, please finish.
No, I was going to say that Stargate was as most productions run on kind of a staggered schedule, meaning while one episode is being shot, another one is being prepped, so that when the episode you prep goes into production, the next episode goes into prep. So it's like it's a machine that's forever in motion.
A typical episode. I remember going on up to the production rooms when we would be waiting for Bridget and for Carol, God bless them, to come and fetch us, and we would see the production calendar, and I believe it was 7 days of shooting for a typical episode. Was
it's
that
hard
right?
to believe that basically it was 7 days, because that feels kind of tight to me. I think it was 7 days main unit, and maybe 2 or 3 days second unit.
Okay. Got it.
But I mean, it's very possible. I would say probable.
And at what point in there was the talent brought around the table to read through the script?
We did not do We didn't do read-throughs for SG-1.
Oh.
And we didn't do them at first for Atlantis, and then we ended up doing them at cast request, and then slowly but surely cast, because we have to do them at lunch. That's the only time we could do them.
Okay.
And even though the cast requested them, after a while they started to they were busy with other things and they couldn't show up, and it reached a point where the producers were doing all we're taking on the roles of the actors, the missing actors, for the read through, and I think it's reached the point where I think when we did 3 read throughs in a row where the producers outnumbered the actors, we decided that was we put an end to the read-throughs. I mean, I like read-throughs. I would do them all the time on Dark Matter, and I like them because it ensures that the cast reads the script, but it also allows you to get ahead of any issues that the cast may have. So we would do the read-through, and I would say, if you guys have any issues, please come see me. And someone like Roger Cross, who appeared in SG-1.
Mm-hmm.
He was very young, and that was a regular on Dark Matter. He always used to come by, and he would have ideas for his dialogue, and that was always very cool. So all actors have their own particular process. But at the end of the day, I always liked the read-throughs, because it ensured that everyone read the script, everyone was on the same page, and then hopefully you didn't have to deal with, issues on the day where something the actor would be like, oh, I don't know if my character would say that. And
right. And at what point, I mean, then you're going to have someone run upstairs and check at the last minute to see if it's okay to change a line.
Right. I would say 2 actors who I recall were always really good about coming by the office were Robert Picardo and Beau Bridges, 2 of the most experienced
heavyweights.
Heavyweights, and they would always come by, and it was always amazing because they would ask to change the most, I don't say inconsequential, but the smallest things in the script. I guess they were just so used to productions where you do not change a word.
That's what Rob said about Star Trek. It was very hard to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it makes them happy,
Yeah, I mean, and yeah. So I mean, I always appreciated the fact that they came up and asked. And I would always be like, great. And sometimes Bob would have like these ideas for like funny lines, and I would always go for it. But I mean, you write the script because you need to hit certain beats. You need to make certain points, and sometimes be very frustrating when the actors would change the dialogue, because it's, occasionally the new dialogue would either contradict something that came before, or something that you were trying to set up earlier, or it would skip over required exposition or explanation.
To let the story move forward. So from the time that how much time would it typically be that, and Rick was different because he got scripts as a producer, got them early. How much time would it be for the principals to get a script before shooting would begin on that particular episode? Would it be mailed to them? Would it be delivered to them to their trailer? What was that process?
Yeah, usually either through the trailers or via email. And Brad and Robert were always very good, and it's something I learned from them that I brought to my various productions. They were always very good at preparing ahead of time. So, like I said, we would have like half the scripts ready to go before we would, start the first day of principal photography. So the actors would have those early scripts. So I mean, there was never a time, unlike a lot of other productions, where they would get the script, let's say, the night before. There was none of that on Stargate.
Yeah, a lot of shows had to, just based on how things were going. One of the things that I have always wanted to know, now that we're really in the minutia of it, I can bring it up because it's in context, is you watch a lot of behind the scenes DVD special features on all these different productions. One of the ones that I like watching is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And there always appears to be this dance between the writer and the actor in terms of the actor has to be able to create the character. But if you want the actor to emote a certain way, how much flexibility did you have in the script to say, Carter is perturbed by this, or, she can't believe that this is happening, and that you want a specific look to be delivered on her face, like she's feeling this certain way? Was it something that you felt that how much granularity could you get written in the script before the actor would say, come on, you're stepping on my toes? And would it be different from actor to actor? Like, I imagine later on in the series, you felt out the actors, and I would write different notes based on each of their responses would be in each script.
It truly is a symbiotic relationship, and as sort of you work together and you get to know each other and each other's rhythms, you know what to expect. And so, if there was an actor who, let's say, I knew didn't read the script, tended not to read the script before they shot, I would tend
it
to,
happened.
Emphasize certain lines. But other actors, I mean, you just knew that when you gave them something, they would just, make a wonderful meal with it. I'm talking like, Amanda, Michael, David, those three and those, SG-1 and Atlantis especially, you'd always know they would, deliver. Not saying the other ones didn't,
no, but you're thinking
great,
specifically, yeah.
But Rick is a guy you did not direct on the page, or I wouldn't even say direct. Offer suggestions on the page. He did it how he did it, and sometimes it was a pleasant surprise. Other times it was not quite what you were going for, but he kind of always did his own thing.
Well, he has a spontaneous background.
Yeah,
I mean that's where his school of thought is from. And I'm often sitting there watching the show and saying to myself, what if this was the writer and what if this is just him? We had Tom Macbeth on a few weeks ago for Chain Reaction, which we'll get to in a little bit here, and I might as well bring it up now. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Mr. Starsky. This is Hutch. And according to Tom Macbeth, that was not written.
Yeah, I don't recall that being written.
Yeah, and he's looking at Tom recalls. Rick is looking at me like, how are you going to respond to that? And he's just like, hello, ma'am. Is the senator home? Would that be just something that you'd be a welcome transformation to you to
sure.
sitting there watching the dailies and going,
Yeah.
wow, that's one of the reasons he's here, is for that spontaneity.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As I said, it would always be a surprise watching the dailies. For me, as long as you got the spirit of what we were going for, and occasionally, an important line in, that would be a small victory for me. But overall, I mean, it was always fun when he would bring something. Although, I mean, there were obviously incidences where he kind of went off the cuff or improvised, but they were actually very rare. But they were actually very rare. I know that there were so many times when I'd be on the boards and the fans would be like, "Oh, Rick is so funny. How did he come up with this line?" And I was like, "Well, actually, that was in the script." And they'd be like, "Oh, but this line." It's because, I mean, it's a testament to Rick that he obviously made it seem so natural.
Right. The fans are close to the actors. And
right.
You have to be careful with how you deal with the actors, because the fans take that very personally. As I've experienced already on this show, it's like, you're not letting him talk. And it's like, this person and I have known each other for a really long time. He would let me know if I'm stepping on his toes. Believe me, I would hear about it. But at the same time, that's just a testament to the quality of the product that you've created, that you get people this invested in the product, and it's their family. It's someone that they invite into their living room, and in many respects, they know fairly well their quirks, and in terms of a person that they believe on some level of their mind exists. Yeah. And it's just joyous. Window of Opportunity was the first episode that you and Paul wrote for the show that appeared. Scorched Earth came first, though, correct?
Yeah, Scorched Earth was the first script we wrote for Stargate. It was the script that landed us a staff position. But Window of Opportunity was our first episode produced. It was the second script we wrote.
Which would you like to talk about first? Which makes more sense?
Let's talk about Scorched Earth, since it was the first one.
The question that I have that I think is not necessarily how significant it is, but you and Paul had a very symbiotic relationship. Which of you, going down this list of 39 written by episodes, are you comfortable in talking through which ones you came up with first and he came up with first, and then just okay? So Scorched Earth is one of my favorite episodes, and it is a conundrum episode where we have an alien race that is standing right in front of us. That we've already heard mentioned earlier in the series, the Incarans, which is one of the great things that I loved about this kind of a show, is that you could do that, mention in an earlier episode. Well, we don't have a lot of time. The Incarans need a planet. And then later on, as we go through the episode, we find out that there's another species that is banking on this world for its survival. Tell us about you and Paul developing Scorched Earth.
Our partnership, and we both have our strengths and our weaknesses. I always tended to be more the idea guy, and he was always very good at taking the idea and really making it a bulletproof story. So remember, actually, I pitched it. I think the working title was "Whose Planet Is It Anyway?" And it was one of, I think, 5 pitches we sent to Brad and Robert, and they chose that one. And we got on the phone with them and we talked through the episode, and we went off and wrote the outline, and they approved the outline, and then we wrote the script. I remember Rob telling me that they had actually had trouble finding writers for the show, just because the show is so mythologically rich, and you either get it or you don't, and it has nothing to do with really your writing ability or talent. And so they only had one copy of the script, and they were on a flight to Hawaii for their golf vacation. And Brad is like, I can't read this, because if it's bad, I'm gonna have a terrible trip. And so Rob was like, I'll read it. So he read it on the flight, and he turned to Brad and he's like, you can enjoy your trip. And so that's how we ended up landing our staff position on the strength of Scorched Earth. And those early scripts, now I remember, were actually very, I mean, it's very different, but the ending that I had originally pitched for Scorched Earth was actually really dark. In fact, now that I think about it, a lot of the stuff I pitched in the early going was very dark. In the original version I pitched, Daniel ends up convincing Lotan, is that his name?
Lotan.
Yeah, to shut down the terraforming process and sacrifice the race for the good of the Ankarans. And it was and in the last scene, Daniel returns to the SGC and he's essentially gifted a memento, and it's like a recording of this beautiful alien music that plays through like the end of the scene, and that's how I envisioned it. And then when we went through the process and ended up being more of a happy ending that I didn't love as much, just because I thought that the solution,
it's too perfect.
It seemed a bit obvious.
Everyone
and perfect.
Gets their cake and eats it too, which is fine. I love the episode.
Yeah.
But in talking with you about that, it would have been interesting to see had it taken a direction more along the lines of like Icon did in later shows. Well, we weren't able to avert nuclear war. It's done.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Those that actor. Let me pull up here.
I think Brian Markinson.
Good for you. Look at that look at that recall. Did you go down to set at all?
I did not go down to set.
You remember Brian?
I remember him because I remember his performance. I thought he was fantastic. I still think he is fantastic. He's it's another guy that unfortunately I've never had the opportunity to work with again, but I would love to.
And Alessandro Giuliani, long before Battlestar, had a great performance as well. Mm-hmm. That's a solid episode because it, in many respects, it shows SG-1, the two sides of SG-1 fighting. You've got
and for that reason, a lot of the Daniel Jackson fans did not like that episode. And it was interesting because it was kind of a trial by fire mainly for me, because I was online. Paul was never online. But to get that kind of visceral, angry response from the fandom was interesting.
On what grounds? Were they upset about Daniel? Because he was arguing with Jack?
Well, the fact that he was arguing with Jack, but also that point where Jack hits the trigger and could have potentially destroyed the ship with Daniel on him. Yeah.
Oh, that's a fair point. Yeah. Daniel was aboard at the time.
Yeah.
But these two made up the yin and the yang of largely what made the show fantastic, was their two mindsets. Daniel has always been willing to speak for those who are not willing or able to speak for themselves.
Look, it made perfect sense. It was a bit dark. However, there was an exchange that was written into the script where there was a reconciliation, kind of a funny kind of moment between Jack and Daniel that ultimately the actors decided they didn't want to do. And so we lost it, which I think would have probably assuaged some fans, maybe not all of them, but a few. But in any case, that's what I remember about that episode.
That reminds me, a lot of the episodes that were a Star Trek show, you would have them back in their quarters, and then the doorbell would ring and one officer would come in and just explain their situation, how they felt about what we had just watched transpire. Whereas with Stargate, a lot of times, as soon as the climax was over, in many cases, we fade to black.
Yeah. Brad, especially, was never a fan of tags.
That's called a tag.
Yeah. Kind of the denouement. We rarely ever did them.
Why? Why? Does he just feel it was not necessary, or? Yeah,
I think it was just a preference. I like tags. I've used them abundantly over the course of my career. I mean, in like my last two shows, Utopia Falls and Dark Matter, all tags. Always put in a tag. I always find that for me, just because maybe it's because my last few shows have been more serialized, but I would always like to end the fifth act with like a big dun 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 moment, and then have a tag, kind of a quiet scene that would also end with almost like a double WTF that propels us into the next episode. But because I guess SG-1 was really more episodic than serialized, there was no need for the tag. But I always kind of liked those quieter, smaller scenes because they always went to character. And
exactly right.
Just I just kind of preferred them.
Yeah.
So one thing I do remember about this episode is I remember Rob did the rewrite on this episode, and he came into my office asking me to come up with a name for aliens. That I came up with the Gen I that we ended up using in Atlantis, but I came up with the Gadmir because his alien naming privileges had been revoked after the Furlings. The Furlings debacle.
Oh my God. And the fans, like a dog to a bone, will not let it go. Has it surprised you over the course of the years, going from generation to generation of fans and keeping your thumb on that pulse, what they continue to focus on and what you'd be like, what, I really worked hard on this, and they never bring it up.
No, not really. I mean, in a big picture sense, it's always the gate, it's exploration, it's family. And that's what I think, especially the latter is what all good science fiction is about. But then on, the specifics, there's certain things they like about, certain episodes, but really for them, the heart of the show are the characters. And that's not surprising. It's something I've always said that I learned on Stargate. People, viewers will tune in for the hook, but they'll stay for the characters.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Window of opportunity.
Yes.
It's brought up almost every day on social media. Somewhere I'm sure it is. Peter DeLuise directed a tour de force for Richard Dean Anderson and Christopher. Well, all of them really, but I mean Rick. His scene at the end with Robin Mosley as Malachi. If it doesn't bring a tear to your eye, or at least hit you in the feels, there's something wrong with you. Tell us about Window of Opportunity.
Window of Opportunity originally, the pitch I came up with was very dark, and I think I might have mentioned this in a previous discussion. The fact that it was really about SG-1 encountering a civilization that was facing an apocalyptic event, and we're using a device to re-loop time in order to give them time to avert the catastrophe that never could be averted. And I remember Rob reading, and he was like, why don't we do this? And he was offering me, he's like, do this and change this and that. And suddenly I realized, I was like, we're just doing Groundhog Day. And he was like, yeah, do Groundhog Day.
And you give that line to Rick.
I was like, yeah. And at the time I was like, we can't just do Groundhog Day. And I realized really what, I think was it Hemingway who said every story is already being told. Ultimately, some variation of the story is already being told, but what makes it special is that it's your characters who are living, experiencing it. And especially the fact that it's O'Neill and Teal'c, the two guys who know nothing about science, who know nothing really, little about the ancient language, were the ones who have to figure it out. And, one of the things I always loved about Stargate was a sense of humor. I remember, Brad telling me one day, he was like, this series is just a comedy now. We're just doing a comedy. And
many respects.
Yeah, I mean, but he was exaggerating, but I always found humor goes a long way towards allowing audiences to connect with characters, but they bring those moments of levity that by contrast make the darker moments that much darker or more poignant, like that the scene with you mentioned with O'Neill appealing to Malachi.
It's beautiful, and it's one of the most natural scenes of the show. Mm-hmm. If you really take a moment to understand where Malachi's pain is coming from, and force that character to think about what's going to happen next, and then what's going to happen after that. I mean, unless he's just so love-stricken and just over the loss of his wife, that he'll be willing to sit through her death again and again. What else can you do but shut it off?
Correct.
This is such an important episode of the franchise. I'm very curious as to what that original draft looked like. Did SG-1 come upon the planet and the time loop happened in front of them, and because they were out of that planet's loop, they just watched everything restart?
No, to be fair, it wasn't a draft. It was just a one-page pitch.
Oh, I see.
So, and from that, we ended up with the outline for Window of Opportunity. So it was very different, but it wasn't really fully fleshed out. It was just an idea at that point.
And in that original idea, SG-1 watched the civilization just go ahead and die?
No, but they well, at the end, yes.
Okay.
So, now that I think of it, just back-to-back destroyed civilizations is what I pitched. And neither of them were destroyed in the end. So
Joseph Mallozzi, PhD, provides Latin for the novice in this.
Yes, that was Peter Deloise. We were in the in the concept meeting, and of course the props department. What kind of shoelaces? What color shoelaces do you want? What kind of shoes do you want? What kind of a book do you want? And Peter was like, what was it? Latin for the novice. It was like author Joseph Mallozzi, and they were like, okay, and
who chose Fruit Loops?
We wrote Fruit Loops into the script, and we were having trouble actually getting the rights to Fruit Loops. And remember, they came back and they were like, "How about Cheerios?" And we're like, "No, it doesn't make any sense."
Jack.
Yeah,
he's
so
a kid.
We ended up and also Fruit Loops. Anyways, so we ended up getting the Fruit Loops. Yeah,
and they had to be glued to the spoon.
I don't recall. Like, I wasn't on set for that.
Okay. But, oh my God. And so it ran short. I would think that, an aside, I would think that Daniel heavy episodes would typically move through the dialogue faster. One of the things that Martin Garrow told us about is when he was writing for First Contact, he had to keep in mind that Rodney and Daniel both spoke very fast.
Sure.
And that has to come into play when you're timing episodes, the velocity at which the actors will move through the content.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to SG-1, and our those scripts would average 52, 53 pages, whereas the Atlanta scripts would average closer to 58, 57, 58, sometimes 59 pages.
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter was that McKay had to move along a lot of the plot.
Yep.
That poor guy. That was his primary role, in addition to just being Rodney.
Yep.
Wow. Any fan reactions that you've gotten to Window of Opportunity over the years that stand out in your mind? It's people bring it back again and again in terms of heroes and the fifth race and this episode as to, I showed this to my little cousins. I showed Window of Opportunity to them, and I showed Ergo to them as hooks to get them invested in the show. Are you surprised that it continually comes up?
I am kind of surprised, to be honest with you. Just we did 300 episodes. It was like last year or maybe earlier this year, I did the Stargate Greatest Episode Challenge, where I had all the fans vote on episodes, and then we did kind of the head-to-head, and Window of Opportunity ended up coming out on top, which was I'm glad fans loved the show so much. But I think I think the funnier episodes tend to do well, but it was also a funny episode with heart and humor.
Exactly.
You get a combination of that, then you have a winner. So I'm just glad it worked out and the fans enjoyed it.
Exactly right. And with Dark Matter, all the time in the world.
Yep. And it's kind of funny. I was saying, I bookend my career with time loop episodes.
Was there a subconscious hope that it would be along the levels of success in that individual episode?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That one was actually, in many ways, a very difficult episode to write, but also a very fast write as well. It was weird in that I knew I wanted to do a time loop episode, and I ended up watching 24 time loop episodes of every genre show that has ever done a time loop episode, because they've all done them, right? So you want to do something different. So I synthesized the formula and I try to kind of find a way to subvert it. And we were in the room. So this is an example where you're in the room and you're trying to spin the idea and it's not going anywhere. One of the things my former writing partner, Paul, was very good at was flagging issues, which he would do. But sometimes when he would do them in the room, he would not offer up a solution. And so we would kind of hit a wall. And we spent 2 days in the room, writer's room, and we got nothing done on Window of Opportunity. Sorry, not Window of Opportunity, on All the Time in the World. And then I remember it came time for me to write it, and I just started writing, and I pretty much wrote the entire script in a day, which I've never done before. In a way, but it was a funny episode, and I tend to write the funnier ones faster. And so everything just kind of came together in a scary way. And I don't really know how to explain it. I'm sure other writers have experienced it as well, where you're getting nowhere with the script, you think you're never going to get it done. And then somehow magically the narrative falls into place. All the pieces fall into place, and you come up with a script, not only a script that is serviceable, but a script that turned out to be, a fan favorite, the Dark Matter fan favorite.
Well, I would think that it would have something to do with the fact that you spent so much time chewing on it, both in the writer's room and subconsciously, that when it came time for you to put pen to paper or fingers to text or whatever, that some part of that had facilitated the faster process, and may just weren't necessarily aware of it. That's probably a very good point. Yeah. This is kind of out of the way, and I'm curious to see how often, or if this ever happened. Was there ever a situation when you were getting to writing an episode, or just you got further down in the process of an episode where you had to go back to the group and say, this is not working. This is not coming out the way that we thought it was. Maybe it'll be good this way, or you know what, it's not happening. Should someone else take a stab at it? I mean, what was the red alert, yellow alert process for that?
It rarely happens. Usually by the time you deliver the outline, you've got the structure. But I remember working on Incursion. And Incursion 1 and 2 was a single episode.
SGU
and I was writing
finale.
it. Yeah.
Season 1.
Yeah. And I was writing it. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was intended to be the finale at that point, or we were going to do another episode after that. But I was writing it, and I got to almost the midway point, or getting close to the midway point of the outline. And I already had like 45, 46 pages. And I realized this is actually a two-parter. And I told the guys, and they were like, okay, write the two-parter, and turned into a two-parter. And so when you watch the episode, it's kind of interesting because, I mean, I don't think it lags at all. It moves fairly quickly. But just so much going on. Sometimes you misjudge your outline. It rarely happens, but when it does, you either find yourself with, too much story or not enough. And in the case of Incursion, we had too much.
How often in that first draft would you spit out? Because I mean, I would imagine when you're just in flow, you just kind of let the scenes go and then look back at it in the end. How often would you have scenes where like, this sequence is just way too long, I've got to kill my darlings here? I mean, it's all great, and I sound so amazing putting these words into these characters' voices, but it's not going to fit. There's no time.
Yeah. I mean, there are tricks writers use to get the page count down. You get rid of those continues at the top of the page, and that saves you, I think, like a page and a half. No one will catch this. Knockout. Lose words from certain shot directions. Yeah, I mean, there was always that would always happen. You would go through it, and you would try to be as succinct as possible, as tight as possible in your dialogues and your general narrative.
Did you ever get a situation where you had looked at the dailies and because you got a script supervisor down there who's meant to make sure that the story goes as planned.
Yeah.
You'd look at the dailies and you're like, these are great performances, but they've missed this piece. Or like the director never happened.
Yep.
Oh, there would be a situation like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There were times, and as Paul would point out, there were times when the actors would not say the line, but the script supervisor, whose job it was to basically remind the actor what they would need to do, would helpfully white out the original dialogue in the script and write in the new dialogue, which is why I mean, this is one of the issues though. When you're producing 20 episodes of television, sometimes 40 episodes of television a year, you don't have time to go down the set.
That's true.
Which is why for Dark Matter and Utopia Falls, I had Ivan Bartok. And Ivan was our special features producer on Stargate, but he's also director. He also writes. And when we were spinning Dark Matter and Utopia Falls, he would be in the writer's room with me. So he would know exactly what I would need. And as a director, he was essentially my on-set supervisor. He would be on set with the director to ensure that he would get everything I needed. Because sometimes directors, and I'm not saying, I mean, there are a couple of directors who I love, but they still do this. They have a cut pattern in their head. So they think, oh, I don't need the close up here, or I don't need, the master here, or I can do this in kind of a oneer. But I like to have choices when I go into the editing room, and if I don't have the material, then I'm handcuffed, and I don't like to be handcuffed. So I was always very good at saying, hey, to the director, make sure you get this. Or in the case of an actor, I mean, like I said, I would try to avoid that on Dark Matter by having the read-throughs. If an actor had an issue with the script, he would go to Ivan, and Ivan, if it was like a big issue, he would text me. But more often than not, it rarely happens. But it was just nice to have someone on set to do kind of that kind of quality control. I mean, that was Michael Greenberg on SG-1 and the directors. I mean, Andy Makita was our producing director on Atlantis. And they served that role. But it's tough if you're not in the writer's room, I would argue.
Yeah, I would think that one way or another, I mean, there would be at certain points down the line, one occasional episode, you would get a situation where you would have even though it's supposed to be on the page, and the script supervisor is supposed to making sure that all those beats are hit, a beat would get missed every now and then. You know? And you just have to kind of deal with it.
Yes, exactly.
Which I guess is what is what pickups can be for, if you would ever get a chance for pickups.
Yeah, we would rarely do pickups though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scorched Earth, Window of Opportunity, Point of No Return.
Oh yeah.
Was this one of your original pitches?
Yes as well.
Okay.
Again, I always kind of like the funny ones. And I remember actually the fans maybe not really liking the episode as much. I mean, it's Window of Opportunities, it's tough to sort of follow that one. And also it was kind of a little sillier than most episodes that had come before, but I kind of loved it. I thought Willie Garson was terrific.
Did you have any say in picking him? Did he audition?
No, at that point
chosen earlier.
I believe I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't recall. I mean, at that point in our career, we were co-producers. Brad and Robert were always nice enough to show us the auditions, and occasionally we would weigh in. But really, Brad and Robert made the call, and of course Rick and Michael as well.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that you're trying. There are a number of people in the Stargate community, a handful of them, who do fervently believe that the franchise is a cover for something that the Air Force is doing. So when you create a character that is heavily invested in sci-fi, I would imagine that some of them would probably take an issue with it, because they're like, that's not me. It's not meant to be you, but I
Mhm.
mean, you see that, and
Right.
that's just how it is. What you said for a while that episode really remained true to itself from the earlier stages all the way through to the completed product.
Yeah.
Is that still the case when you look back on it? And does it still hold a special place in your heart?
It does. I mean, I haven't rewatched it in a while, but I mean, after, like I said, we came up with the pitch for Scorched Earth, and it was, a darker ending, and that was changed. And then Window of Opportunity, the original idea pitched was very different from the end product. And then the end products were fantastic. The Point of No Return was the first one where from start to finish, the story pitched was pretty much the episode shot. And it was fun. I think back to it, it was fun because I remember Rick had a really good time with the episode. He got along really well with Willie, and it was an episode that just came together really well.
And it's another one of those where the ending, even though it's a funny episode, the ending hits you in the gut.
Yep.
You realize that they were deserters from a planet that eventually didn't make it.
Yep. Yeah.
How early on was it thought that Martin would be perfect for the 100th and would if he'd taken some kind of medication and forgot that he was an alien?
Yeah, I don't recall. I remember actually Rob pitching out the idea for 200, and originally it was just like remember when, and it would just be a trip down memory lane, and we were like, well, it needs something more to hang off, to hang those stories off of it. It needs, a central story, and we went back and forth, and I don't recall who came up with the idea of kind of the TV show, but
Wormhole Extreme is what I'm asking about. Like when
Wormhole Extreme
for the 100th, 200 later, but for the 100th episode, how early on was it like, Willie, he had a great time.
Well,
that character was great.
Yes, yeah. I mean, in that case, it was very much the fact that we loved Willie and what he did in the episode, and we wanted to find a way to bring him back. And whereas Point of No Return was, like I said, felt like a bit of a departure because it was a bit silly. I mean, Wormhole Extreme just kind of blows the
right
barn doors right off, right? Yeah.
We fully embrace the fact that on some level this really is a comedy.
Yeah, we did cameos and just so many in jokes in that episode. I have to go through it. I mean, to be reminded of all the little Easter eggs, just mainly for us, the production.
Would you please give your line from that episode?
Hey, what happened to all the donuts?
And then we didn't see Willie for another 100 episodes. I think on some level it would have made sense to just, revisit that narrative and use it as a storytelling device for a Treehouse of Horror kind of story.
Yeah.
What was it like writing 200? I mean, you all took sections of it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's a very different experience. It was a lot of fun. The fact that we went off and wrote our own little vignettes. We each of us pitched a different idea, and then we all went off and wrote. And I think I did like half of Invisible Neil. I did the Farscape thing because I love Farscape. I did. Who did the puppets? Was it Rob who did the puppets or Brad?
Oh, gosh.
Anyways, it was.
We'll get to that in the future.
Yeah.
One of my favorite guest stars, my favorite guest star actually for the longest time was Anna Louise Plowman. Dr. Sarah Gardner / Osiris.
Yes.
The Curse. The Stargate really didn't do, because that's, if you watch a lot of, Egyptian television or like things that take advantage of Egyptian tropes, curses and mummies and everything like that weren't really a part of Stargate's fabric. And this episode began to kind of like tap into that just a little bit. You got to be careful around these things. They may kill you. Tell us about The Curse.
I remember being very excited when I thought of the idea for The Curse because it was like an element of, it was an unexplored aspect of Daniel Jackson's backstory. And I would have thought that 4 seasons in, you would have covered all that. But I thought, oh, this is what a great opportunity. And as you said, Anna Louise Baum was amazing. There's something about British villains that make them especially evil.
Star Wars, yeah.
But I remember it was great. I was, this one, sort of Easter eggs for longtime Green Lantern fans, but probably all the characters were named after Green Lanterns. As the Stewart Expedition. I think Dr. Rayner
Dr.
was,
Rayner.
what was the
Dr. Jordan?
Yeah, Dr. Jordan.
Yeah. Gardner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sarah Gardner. Yeah.
Did Anna Louise? Was she living stateside at the time, or was she overseas?
No, actually, she was overseas. She was overseas.
And so you would take overseas auditions?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Very good. And it was so. There is a rumor running through fandom that Daniel, after the death of Shara in season 3, that there was that material for Daniel. Dried up is not the characteristic that I'm going for, but was there an intent among the writers to give Daniel a narrative reason to really keep on going through the Stargate rather than just I'm with my team? There's got to be, that was the original pitch for him being on SG-1. He's out looking for his wife, and then in season 3, his wife died.
Yeah,
was that on purpose in the curse to give him something else to keep an eye out for through the gate? No.
I mean, to be honest with you, we joined in season 4, so we did not experience that. Although we were the first 3 seasons, we didn't live through the experience and kind of the shift with Daniel. So in our mind, he was essentially a member of the SG-1 family, and even though he wasn't, let's say, driven by the search for his wife, he was driven by this, who he was, his the hunger for exploration, his his lead role in the team. That's what we saw kind of driving him after Shari's death. Backing up to the curse, I also I think this episode was the beginning of my what's the word, displeasure with some of the sci-fi advertisements for the you don't find out who Osiris is until the end of the episode, unless you watch the ad for sci-fi that basically shows her using the hand device and hurling them against the wall, and I was like, well, that's just fine. Okay. I mean, did they even bother watching the episode?
Sometimes
that would happen all the time. That would happen all the time.
The bomb isn't the building. In the building, the bomb is the building.
Yeah.
The one major line at the.
Yeah. Or when we brought Beckett back, the commercial was really, you won't believe the last 5 minutes, and then it's Beckett going, "What took you so long? Well, why won't they believe it? You already told them."
There had to have just been a huge I remember that there was footage taken with Brad, and this is just kind of just to go into that. There was footage filmed where Brad did an interview, and he was asked to do an interview before that content was released, and then say something about it after the content was released. And wherever that went, they just put it out all at once. And it was like, guys, come on, have a little bit more sensitivity toward the product here.
I just remember actually once being on that was their kind of the marketing department.
Yeah.
And the representative from the marketing department was like, yeah, can you tell us, give us a little sizzle package of what we can expect for season I think 6, so that we can get our team excited so that they can, do a really good job. And I'm like, are they do you guys pay your team? Isn't that what, isn't,
because I assume they're giving the episodes at that point.
Yeah. Do you want to be,
do
we really have to be excited to it's like, they're like kids, you gotta, hey, let's everyone do a good job and get paid. Thank you. And maybe don't reveal any spoilers. That would be fantastic as well.
At some point, it would have been like, can we just hire Gateworld to do it?
Yeah.
They'll do a great job. We would have been ready and waiting for the curse.
Yes.
It's one of those episodes where, and you didn't do this a whole heck of a lot, where it's not a whodunit, but I guess it is kind of a whodunit because Dr. Jordan was killed, and we find out midway through that there's a Goa'uld running around, which I think actually that image right there is the MRI of the gate of ISIS.
See, yeah.
When you're writing a story like that, are you trying to figure out as you're moving through it, is this too obvious? I mean, we're trying to bait the audience into thinking that it's Steven, but it's Osiris. Commercial aside.
Yes.
Is it a dance when you're watching it and going, you know what? For some people, this is just going to be. I mean, there really is no way to tell that it's Sarah. You don't really leave any kind of hints. If you're watching, I mean, you can watch it again and see Anna Louise Plowman's her facial expressions when she's trying to get Daniel to give some information, and then the frustration when it's not. It's clearly Osiris going, "Damn it, I'm not getting anywhere with this guy."
Right.
For that, did you think you pulled it off, or did?
It's so hard to tell. I'll be honest with you. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Paul would say I tend to be too subtle. I always like to kind of surprise the audience, but I mean, there are very few suspects in that episode, and you're never going to surprise everyone. There'll always be audience members who will be like, I knew Kaiser Soze was, so. As long as it works for you, and it worked for me. So,
was there? At what point did you decide we've got to get her back? We've got to get Osiris back. Was that before she was even cast? That was the intent. That at some point we're going to see Osiris again because she says Osiris will return in her third person voice.
Yeah, I was really watching the dailies, and we thought, wow, she is remarkable. We have to have her back. But of course, easier said than done. I think. We tried to get her back earlier, but there was an issue with scheduling. I mean, she was in the UK, so that made things a little tricky.
I would imagine Summit Last Stand and her footage from Revelations were probably all shot in her same visit.
Yeah.
It would just make sense to go ahead and do that. And man, she was fantastic.
Yes.
Man, I really wish we'd had her around more. I think that she gave she gave Michael a steak to chew on. With all the emotions that he had to go through. But woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? Talking about bringing people that you did get to bring back, Ronny Cox, we had not seen since Politics. Ronny was always the champion for the clip shows, man. When you see Ronny on screen, it was like, are we going to go and do a clip show? What a tour de force.
Yeah.
People are, there are characters that you go in the forums and people are like, oh, I love to hate this guy. Like Harry Mayborn. Oh, I love to hate him. And then it comes to Kinsey and people are like, I hated that guy. And it's like, but didn't you love to hate him? Like, no, I didn't. No. I just hated him. It's like, but that's Mayborn, a good performance.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas Mayborn was a lovable rogue. Kinsey was just, a typical politician. It's funny. I actually ran into Ronny, I think 2 years ago. I was in LA and I just had a meeting with DC Comics and I had time to kill. And so I went into a diner and as I was leaving, he was coming in and I was like, hey, Ronny, I don't know if you remember me, but I worked on Stargate. And he was like, he goes, I had such a good time working on Stargate. He goes, you guys, if ever I had an issue, if there was a scheduling issue, you guys always found a way to make it work. I always really appreciated, the effort you guys put in. It was really nice to hear. I love to hear from people who worked on the show, especially guest stars who came in and were really, wowed by kind of the warmth and support, all around.
Did Rick look forward to playing off of him? Yeah.
I think Rick, really, there were certain performances where you notice Rick really step up.
You do.
And certain actors that he really responded to, and Ronny was one.
Yeah, and Tom was another.
Yep.
Absolutely. This is a great show because it brings Hammond a little bit more front and center. Was there an intent for a while there to create a more Hammond centric in terms of the focus of the story kind of episode?
Are you talking about Chain Reaction? Or are you talking about
Chain Reaction?
Chain Reaction. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, oh my gosh! I mean, I think back to that first season and how varied those episodes were.
Very much so.
And the fact that we tried to, just offer up as different stories and different focuses, and Don was a great actor, and a good friend, and it was nice to give him an episode to really sink his teeth into.
Lawrence Dane takes over the SGC, and we get a very different kind of personality. Probably either someone who is directly involved or taking orders from someone who is involved with Kinsey. And he nearly blows up the planet in one show. The actor was Lawrence Dane as General Bauer, a very different energy. And we found out how much we really appreciated having General Hammond there to hold back the tide.
Yeah.
Was that also Brad's actual daughters in that scene?
I believe they were.
Tessa and Kayla?
Yeah. His young daughters in the background as Hammond's grandchildren.
Which was, I believe, what episode was that? I think that was in Tin Man, which actually, there. Your granddaughters' names are Tessa and Kayla. Any other special memories from writing Chain Reaction? It's the first episode where we've got O'Neill and Mayborn pairing up, the Starsky and Hutch kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, those scenes were always a blast to write. The kind of the back and forth. You kind of love that verbal barrage between the two. Remember, that was a scene where they had to figure out Kinsey's password. That's Rob Cooper's dog, late dog Oscar, makes a cameo in that.
The episode. Dog's name was Oscar?
Oscar, yeah. Hi, Oscar.
And Oscar also, I think, appeared in 200, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly.
Yeah, he was behind the wheel at Jack's truck.
Oh, he was he the dog? Maybe.
He sure looks like him. It's another. Was it a border collie? I think it was a border collie.
No.
Was it Australian Shepherd?
He was I
can't think of what he was.
I want to say Shih Tzu.
A Shih Tzu? Shih Tzu? He was bigger than a Shih Tzu.
Oh, no, then it might not have been Oscar.
Okay. Didn't Rick have a dog?
Yes, he had an Australian border collie.
That was Kinsey's dog.
Yeah.
That's got to be it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that makes sense. Prodigy.
Yes.
We brought in actress. It was Cadet Haley, Elizabeth Rosen.
Yes.
Who later returned for one more episode.
Yeah.
This is really an episode that brought the Air Force a little bit more into focus, and had a guest from General Ryan himself.
Yep.
Did the Air Force reach out and say where did that start?
I don't really recall. This is actually probably a question for Brad or Robert, but I know on SG-1 the Air Force vetted all the scripts, and they were huge fans of the show. I mean, I was amazed by all the postcards and letters we would get from the troops, who would tell us how much they loved the show. I think General Ryan just requested, and so they reached out, and of course the production was like, well, hell yeah, sure, if he wants to be on the show. And he played himself. He was not a Goa'uld or any anything like that. It was interesting having so much security.
I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Would a scene like that keep Rick more on his toes? You know?
I think it did. I really think it did.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And opposite of Don, that was a room full of heavies.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Was there an intent on your and Paul's part to highlight the Air Force Academy in that episode?
It was an intent, but I mean, you know, one of the criticisms that we would occasionally receive with the fact that they felt that we would glorify the military. They should glorify the military, and you know, I kind of roll my eyes. You know, I think you know, we have a lot of respect for the military, and I think that was very obvious in the production. I mean, I think we were glorifying violence
or war. Yeah. But the men and women who serve, that's different.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and it's certainly made its voice heard with the fan reaction. There's plenty of people who I mean, Terrell Rothery was talking about how when she would go on the USO tour over to Korea, they only had a certain number of DVDs and things that they could watch, and Stargate was one of them.
Amazing. The show. Remember we got a DVD from the space station.
Yes.
And
absolutely, they were watching it up there too.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Rosen as Haley.
Yeah.
Were you how involved would you get to be in casting at this point in the show and later on?
This was an interesting casting because it actually came down to her and an actress called what was the character's name?
Cadet Haley?
Jennifer Halley. Sorry. In the first draft I wrote, the character's name was Jennifer Halley. And Paul changed the character's name to Jennifer Haley, I think.
Okay.
And then actresses auditioned, and the actress I loved, that I kind of wanted, was an actress called Jennifer Hawley. It was exactly the same name as
You're kidding.
The kid. No. And we ended up casting her in The Tomb in a later episode.
The Russian.
But yes.
Isn't that bizarre? The exact same name?
Yes, the exact same name. And it's just interesting because Paul was like, that's a ridiculous name. I think we have to change it to Haley. And I was like, oh, okay. And then.
Oh, so when it went out to audition for Jennifer Haley, Jennifer Hawley showed up to audition for it?
Yes.
That's even more bizarre.
Yes, it was pretty bizarre.
Wow, absolutely. And Ivan Bartok also guest.
Yes, as I like to refer to him as Blinky Cadet number 3. Yes.
Because he blinks a lot.
Yes.
Oh, God. Who was the one who directed that episode? Peter DeLuise, because I knew he made him sit through several takes.
Yeah. Notorious. Peter DeLuise.
Which of the directors, I guess that's not an entirely fair question, would you look forward to working with the most? Which of the directors did you feel like you were most compatible with? And you just knew that they were going to create a product that like you didn't expect? Or were they all pretty consistent from one to the other?
I think they were all pretty consistent. Andy, Martin, Peter, Will. But I mean, to be honest with you, I just think back to my years on Stargate, and there was Will Waring was the director that I spent the most time with, like on set. I remember I was actually on set for Whispers, most of Whispers. I was on set for most of what was the Joe Delferland episode? Harmony.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And he started off earlier on in Stargate as, I think.
Yeah, he was a camera operator.
Yeah. That was the thing that I loved about watching the names on that show as the franchise kind of grew. When people would leave and work on to other projects, you would keep and out of the quality that these people were creating, and the fact that they were around earlier on, it just made sense to let them be the ones.
Yeah, I mean, and that was very much Stargate. Yeah, I mean, Brad and Robert always kind of fostered that environment and supported you and allowed you to grow. And I mentioned cast that I've worked with on Stargate that I ended up working with on Dark Matter. But I mean, directors Andy Makita, Will Waring, Peter DeLuise, Martin Wood, and Amanda Tapping all directed episodes of Dark Matter for me.
Last episode, season 4, Exodus.
Oh, yes. We get to blow up a planet.
Get to blow up a friggin' planet. The Vorax
system.
The
sun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the planet I blew up as well, I would surmise. Apophis returns.
Yes.
And I think this is the first episode that you wrote that actually features good old Apophis, the great Peter Williams. You also bring in Jacob Carter, Carmen Argenziano, Tanith. Yes. So that season arc throughout the season was the first like Jaffa revenge story with Tanith.
Yeah.
Was that something that was very early on in the writers' room for that your first year, an early obvious benchmark that this was going to be a piece that was going to thread its way throughout the season?
Yeah. I mean, it really varies from show to show and series to series, but I always kind of like to have an end game in mind for the end of the show, even if you don't know exactly what the episode is going to be. You know, kind of what the overall arc of the season is, and Exodus does a very nice job of having everything kind of dovetail, and Carter does what she does best, and Onino does what he does best, and
you have a couple of standing sets. I know that you had the Tok'ra set standing for season 4. Because there were several Tok'ra episodes that were built into that season.
I remember the Tok'ra set and their exceptionally pointy walls. Just the fact that, how many times they weren't paying attention and ended up cutting up their arms.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Seriously, you look at that. They have all these like
spray painted hay bales or something.
Yeah,
it looked fantastic.
Yeah,
but it was. I don't think Anise was featured in that episode. I think she was already gone at that point. But she had the actress who played it. I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she had a long run that season.
Was it
Vanessa Angel?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. We often didn't have actors who repeated so frequently. Did that actress have a contract to come in for a certain number of episodes? Or was it just one episode after another for that early on in early group in season 4? Her story was facilitated.
It was really more one episode after another. Her inclusion was a request by, at the time, Vice President of Television, MGM. Gosh, I can't remember his name.
It's not Charlie Cohen.
No.
Okay.
Charlie, by the way, I have to say, Charlie was Vice President of MGM Television after. You could not find a bigger sci-fi fan than Charlie Cohen. I mean, he was like the best of both worlds because he was an executive, obviously, who oversaw the production. He has such respect and love for not only the genre but the show as well. It will always warm our hearts to make Charlie happy. So nothing but very, very pleasant memories of Charlie. Hank Cohen.
Hank Cohen. That's it. So no relation, I don't think.
No relation. So he made a request for a sexy female alien. So we ended up including the sexy female alien, and we ended up giving him a line because he appears in
Hank does
Wormhole Extreme as an executive who, as he's getting into a car, says, "You know what the show needs is a sexy female alien." That's the line we gave him.
I did not know that was him. Oh gosh, what was it like bringing in Apophis? This character started. The villains.
He's
for
iconic,
SG-1.
and Peter Williams is just such a terrific actor, and it was a real treat for us, and just to be able to sort of play in that sandbox, because he was a character who died and came back, and it was just a lot of fun. It was just such like I think back to that episode. It was such a huge episode. We mentioned the fact that all those episodes in season 4 were so varied. You have the small episodes, you have the funny episode, you have the, kind of the kind of more the ethical, sort of moral quandary of Scorched Earth, and then you have this, the big spectacle of blowing up a sun. Yeah.
And some great visual effects. So this was your first cliffhanger. Was there an idea of, because obviously we end this show in some of the more treacherous circumstances that the show has, that the characters have been in. Did you know at this point that replicators were going to be featured in the next season? Did you know really that how you were going to resolve Teal'c's death?
At that point, I don't think we knew, or I think maybe we had an idea, but I mean, at that point we hadn't really fleshed things out. At that point, it was just an idea. I think back to, I think I did a blog post where I actually broke down all the season finales that I've written, and I ended up writing quite a lot because I think, I look back at like Exodus, I look back at like, Camelot and, Incursion 2, Gauntlet, which sadly was like a series finale.
Oh, God. Yeah. Don't get me started, man. Too early.
Yeah.
It's
a
great two-parter, and clearly it's just absolutely one of my favorites because it does so much of what makes the show great. The characters are really true to themselves and get to exercise their best acting chops, and the visual effects were stellar.
Yeah.
It was really good stuff.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you going a little bit overtime with me here and walking me through your first
This
season.
is fun, actually. It's really stirred some long dormant memories.
You don't need ginkgo when you got me.
Maybe this gives me the inspiration and drive I need to finish this damn outline I'm working on now. So tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You guys created a hell of a show. And the reason that you and I get a chance to talk about it is because people are watching, my friend. We just hit 5,000 subscribers last weekend.
Wow.
We're in week 5, week 7 when this thing goes up. But it really means a great deal to me to have you as a cornerstone here to
I appreciate it. And let me know what I can do, and, send me the links, and I'll give you a blog shout out. I'll give you a shout out.
JosephMallozzi.com. It's right there, the spelling on the screen.
Yes.
You got Canadian Thanksgiving. Has that come yet?
No, it passed already.
It did pass. All right.
But we celebrate Christmas the same time you guys celebrate Thanksgiving.
You do?
No, I'm just.
It's like, that's not true.
It just no.
My friend, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for
having me. Give all those
me.
little puppers a hug for me.
I will.
You take care of yourself, and I'll talk with you real soon, okay?
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Joseph Mallozzi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a great deal to me to know that you are out there and enjoying the show. This was a little bit more of a different episode because we're going specifically down the list of certain shows from season 4. And this is going to be more typical of a lot of the later episodes in the series because we're deliberately building a list of oral Stargate content for the future. So I hope you enjoyed it because there's going to be a lot more of this. Thanks again to Joseph Mallozzi, and thanks so much to my moderating team, Summer, Keith, Tracy, Jeremy, Ian. You guys are fantastic. Linda, my right hand gate gabber, and to Jennifer for helping me to continue to build this show. I appreciate you watching, and hopefully we'll be back real soon with another. I know we will. We're a little bit earlier. I'm actually recording this episode on November the 10th, so I don't know what's going to come next because we haven't actually got there in time. We do have one of our guests lined up, though, so keep your ear to the ground for an announcement really soon. I'm David Reed. We'll see you on the other side.